Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 years to slow the spread. It is the 2-year anniversary of the United States of America collectively losing its mind. Collectively lost its mind on March 16th, 2020. And I was always of sound mind. I never bought into the lies. I never bought into the Great Reset narrative, not one bit, but I remember those who do and did. And I also am remembering those who learn their lessons as well. So with that said, we're going to talk about 2 years to slow the spread and the too few lessons learned over the last 2 years. So I want to itemize. We're going to talk about America, we're going to talk about the church, and then we're going to talk about our ability to fight back. And I'm going to itemize those 3 categories, and we're going to talk about each of those 3 things. So don't forget to like the video. Also, subscribe to the Evangelical Dark Web, because Evangelical Dark Web did not fall for the Great Reset narrative in 2020 and will not fall for it again in 2022, 2024, 2026, etc., etc. So is America finished? Can America recover? That's the first area I want to cover. And I believe the answer is no. I'm not convinced we can recover from this. This is our 1204 moment, and that is a reference to the Eastern Roman Empire, who was sacked. The city of Constantinople was sacked during the Fourth Crusade. That was the Fourth Crusade. And they never were able to recover from that. They would eventually fall in 1453 to the Ottoman Turks, but they never recovered from 1204, and it showed. So with that said, I think this is America's 1204 sacking of Constantinople. And part of why I think that's the case is we can't recover from this because 80% of the US dollar has been printed in the last 2 years. 80%. And that's outrageous. The amount of hyperinflation we are experiencing right now is in part because of the large increase in the supply of money. And here's the kicker. The United States is now creating a critical mass of countries around the world that are rejecting the US dollar or about to reject the US dollar. The sanctions on Russia are a prime example of a short-term political play that will have long-term severe consequences, particularly as it relates to America trying to hold up its fiat currency against the global marketplace. I believe America is creating a critical mass of countries that will in turn soon reject the US dollar. Russia, China, India, and several other large countries. Once they reject the US dollar, what's going to keep our economy, our government afloat? So can the United States recover? I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it is going to require ending the Fed. It is going to require ending the Fed to save America. I don't know. From an economic standpoint, this current US dollar cannot survive forever, and it's not on a path to survive much longer either. So we got to end the Fed, and I think we can do a lot of reforms to restore freedom, but I'm not sure the United States can recover. I'm not even sure if the United States has a stomach for freedom anymore. That's the depressing part. Even the Canadians seem to have more stomach for freedom. We saw the People's Convoy recently, and that was a massive LARP. That was a live-action role-playing experience because they did nothing except drive around and meet senators. And God bless those people, because they're probably extremely well-meaning while they're accomplishing nothing. Still, they didn't accomplish anything. And I'm not going to give them participation trophies for showing up 2 years too late to fight for our freedoms. You don't get a participation trophy for that. You just don't. So with that said, America has a very tough path path if it wants to recover, and that will require extreme monetary reforms. That will require making the current Democrat Party unelectable nationally and in several areas locally. The second area I want to focus on is the church. Did the church learn from her mistakes? The church completely dropped the ball on this time. We had a chance to be salt and light. We had a chance to be salt and light, and we chose to be just like the rest of the world, peddling the same crap as the rest of the world, as corporate America, as the government, as the CDC. We chose to peddle that collectively as opposed to the truth, as opposed to being salt and light. We mostly peddled garbage, and we are completely derelict in our missional duty, and it shows. But did the church learn from that? And I think the answer is not enough. Now, we did see major things go on. We saw churches basically hemorrhage membership, large megachurches that adopted Branch Covidianism, the largest religion in America, from 2020 to 2022. It might still be the largest religion, but it's definitely on the decline. We saw large megachurches hemorrhage members because of their embrace of Branch Covidianism. We can talk about FBC Naples, Florida. That is one example of a church that hemorrhaged membership. We can talk about the Potter's House Church in Denver, Colorado, closing an entire location because they couldn't sustain it after they chose to lock down their church. There are several examples of churches losing half their membership and not getting it back, and they didn't deserve that membership back. So the church learned. Big Eva did not learn. The church, in part, did learn a lot, I think. I think a lot of Christians learned that we need to actually think about Romans 13 and put our thinking hats on instead of just having the stupid midwit mentality of this means obedience to government no matter what, or so long as the government commands us not to sin. And we had to think long and hard about that as a church. We did have to have those conversations, and I think a lot of people in the pews, not people in Big Eva, not even people in the pulpits, the people in the pews, I think, are at the right conclusion on that. Additionally, we also faced some of the last 2 years of major wokeism in the church, particularly exposed because the lockdowns created a powder keg that totally erupted when St. George Floyd was martyred on the streets of Minneapolis. So, in addition to these two factors, the church had a lot of learning to do. And the sad fact is many Christians, many believers were without faithful churches for 2 years, and still without faithful churches for 2 years. I know I had to find a faithful church, but not everyone was as lucky as me. So it's tough, but I do believe a lot of Christians learned. I don't know if enough Christians learned, and I don't know if enough Christians are discerning enough to not fall for it again. That's what I'm looking for. People that won't fall for the banana in the tailpipe again. So, lastly, I want to talk about, are enough people awake politically? Do we have the capital and momentum to fight back against what we experienced and to provide safeguards to not experience this ever again? And so far, I think there are too many low info voters out there. We've seen that early on in the primary cycle. We've seen so far that incumbents win, because too many low info voters will support their incumbent politician in a primary, despite the fact that they probably complained about their job performance as it related to Branch Covidianism. We saw that with Greg Abbott, and we'll see that again. Guarantee it. However, I'm doing my part. I am running for local office in the county in which I live in so as to fight back against not only the injustice that was committed the last 2 years, but to also provide safeguards against the injustice and tyranny that comes from Annapolis, and to ensure that it never happens again. We're going to go on offense where I live. That's what I'm on a mission to do locally. So, with that said, there are people that are learning. There are pockets of red-pilled people. But are there enough of us? There might be. But I'm not fully convinced. I don't think there's enough data yet. But here is where the critical mass is forming the other way. One of the things that's really exploded in the last 2 years are alternative social media sites, most notably Gab, which is very friendly to Christians, very much the only free speech platform that really exists that does not have other objectionable content clauses, and does not have hate speech clauses, and does not have like Truth Social. I did an entire stream on how that's a crappy social media platform. So with that said, Gab is creating a critical mass of red-pilled individuals, and that gives hope that there are enough of us out there, not to be the majority, but enough of us out there to be a very loud minority. And that's what we need to be, is a loud minority. Because those are the people that get things done. The sheep will fall in line. The normies will fall in line. Number one factor in a primary election is name recognition. It's not policy even. It's name recognition. The normies fall in line. If you are running for local office, get your name out there. That's the number one thing you can do. Number one. So, overall, the last thing I want to say is that the last 2 years were a great revealing. It revealed so many frauds. So many frauds. Like, Ben Shapiro should have zero credibility at this point because that dude lied to you because his wife is a doctor. He lied to you for nearly 2 years. He was swallowing the blue pill and feeding it to his audience, or pooping it to his audience, I should say. And, you know, people that fought the system supposedly but didn't because they were jabbed, so the fight wasn't that personal to them, like Dan Bongino. There's a lot of people out there that were revealed as frauds this entire time. Fox News, frauds. So, with that said, revealing is huge, and that is a win for us. So many people in the church were revealed as frauds as well in the last 2 years, in part because of the embrace of Branch Covidianism. We saw directly how the circle between woke churches and Branch Covidian churches, or the Venn diagram, became a circle. So with that said, the last 2 years have revealed us what, you know, people like Francis Collins meant for evil, God will use for good. And we know that God causes all things to work together for the good, for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. We know that. That is a promise to believers, and a very hopeful promise at that. So stay in the fight. The fight is never over. And we got more work to do to red pill the masses. And I love using Matrix analogies because the Matrix is just ripped off from the Bible. It's ripped off from the gospel. So let's start red pilling people. And by red pilling them, red pill them with the gospel, the reddest pill of all. So that's all I got to say for that today. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe. That is the least you can do if you want to support Evangelical Dark Web and its content. evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. You can do it there. It's a Patreon-like system. And I will catch you on the next one.